The digestive system is truly a remarkable system, but it can fail or succeed based on different aspects of health and regulation. And we'll talk a little bit about that now. So you've probably heard this term before, homeostasis. Homeostasis is the maintenance of the constant internal conditions, your blood chemistry, your temperature, your blood pressure, and this is all under control of these are all part of your body's control system. So what keeps us in homeostasis? Well, a big role is played by our hormones. And our hormones are chemical messengers that send signals to different parts of the body to make sure everything stays in order or stays in balance. Hormones are secreted by a variety of glands in response to altered conditions in the body. And these hormones travel to one or more specific target organs where they elicit a specific response to maintain this tight control or strict homeostasis. One of the hormones involved in digestion is a hormone called gastrin. Gastrin is secreted by cells in the stomach wall, and its target organ is the stomach. And what gastrin does is it results in the secretion of gastric acid. When you think about food, your stomach starts to release gastrin. When food arrives in your stomach, it continues to release gastrin. And gastrin allows for the release of acid until the stomach arrives at the pH that it needs to be at to do its function. And as we talked about before, that pH is around 2, and the function is to start to denature proteins and to start mixing up the food that has arrived in the stomach to produce chyme. Gastrin is the most studied GI hormone, but the GI tract actually releases many hormones, over 50 hormones, many of which regulate food intake and influence satiety or a feeling of fullness. Some of the other hormones that are released by the GI tract are hormones with funny names like secretin, which causes the pancreas to secrete its digestive hormones, or cholecystokinin, which causes the release of bile. There are also some hormones that we will study later that influence and communicate with the brain a feeling of fullness that makes us stop eating. And these hormones are felt to be involved with the regulation of body weight. Also contributing to the health of the digestive system are microbes, which you may have learned in microbiology are small organisms like bacteria, viruses, fungi, and protozoa, which contribute to the health of the GI tract. The GI microbiota, which is all of these organisms found in the GI tract, is also referred to as gut flora. And this microbiota is influenced by our genes and also influenced by the foods that we eat. The pH of our GI tract also helps maintain homeostasis. The pH is the concentration of hydrogen ions, and the lower the pH, the stronger the acid. pH of 2 is considered a strong acid, 6 is a weak acid, 7 is neutral, and anything greater than 7 is considered alkaline. In foods, we have things known as prebiotics and probiotics. Prebiotics are indigestible substances in foods, such as fiber, that stimulate the growth of beneficial bacteria within the GI tract. These beneficial bacteria are felt to maintain the health of the lower GI tract, specifically the colon, and decrease inflammation. As they work on the fiber in the gut, they produce nourishing substances like fatty acids that help keep the lower GI tract healthy and are felt to have a role in decreasing the incidence of colon cancer. Also in the foods that we eat, there are substances called probiotics, which are live microorganisms that are found in foods and dietary supplements that confer health benefits when consumed in sufficient quantities. So for example, yogurt that contains live and active colonies, or things like kombucha that is fermented and contains some of these probiotics, seem to have a role in maintaining overall gut health. The GI tract is the first organ in the body to deal with nutrients and ultimately maintains the health and nutrition status of the whole body. The intricate architecture of the GI tract makes it sensitive and responsive to conditions in the environment. Previously, we talked about how the small intestine in particular has a very intricate structure, the villus structure, which helps with maximizing the surface area for absorption and digestion. Disturbances in our overall nutrition, in other words, if we are malnourished, this villus structure can become damaged. Or if we have a disease such as celiac disease, the villus structure can become damaged and flattened out. And this will greatly influence our future nutritional status by decreasing the ability to absorb nutrients. Lifestyle factors such as sleep, physical activity, state of mind, and nutrition affect overall GI health. Adequate sleep helps for repair and maintenance of tissues. Physical activity keeps our muscles of the GI tract healthy, keeps them toned, and protects against cancer of the colon. Our mental state affects digestion and absorption through the activity of nerves and hormones that help regulate these processes. Have you ever noticed sometimes if you are nervous or anxious, your stomach becomes upset, or maybe you develop a little bit of diarrhea? This is the effect that our nerves or our mental state is having on our GI tract. And as we previously stated, adequate nutrition is necessary to maintain the intricate structures of the GI tract and keep them healthy. We'll talk about some diseases of the GI tract that affect overall health during this discussion. Now we're going to talk a little bit about food safety. Sometimes our GI tract becomes affected by things in food that shouldn't be there, by bacteria and viruses that wouldn't ordinarily occur in food. If we look at our book, there's a whole list of microbes in foods that can produce food-borne illness. Most of these are bacteria, but some of these are viruses, such as noroviruses. We can either get a food-borne illness infection, which means that the viruses and the bacteria that are in food multiply within our GI tract and cause the symptoms of food-borne illness, such as nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea. Or we can get a food-borne illness intoxication, which means that the bacteria in the food can produce a toxin inside our body that causes symptoms related to food-borne illness. So it's really important to make sure that where we obtain our food from is a safe source to obtain our food from. The Food and Drug Administration and the USDA contribute to making sure that where we obtain our food from is safe. They regularly inspect food facilities, and they also have, food facilities also have control programs referred to as HACCP, Hazard Analysis Critical Control Point systems, that determine where the hazards are in food production. So by and large, our food supply is relatively safe. Although at times things do happen within the food supply where bacteria kind of sneaks through the system. And this is where you hear that certain food items have been recalled because of the presence of things like E. coli or salmonella, or perhaps even things like listeria. So we can rapidly respond to these recalls, and consumers are made aware of these recalls because of markings in the food that identifies lots of foods that were the lot of food that was produced that may be contaminated with these bacteria. At our own homes, it's important to know how to keep food safe. And there are 4 simple ways to keep food safe. We want to make sure the surfaces that we use and our hands are always clean when we are preparing foods. We want to make sure that we separate foods and don't cross-contaminate. For example, it's rather dangerous to store uncooked meat around foods that we are going to consume without cooking them. We want to make sure that any surfaces that we've used to prepare uncooked meat, such as a cutting board that we might use to cook chicken, is not used to cut up foods that we're going to eat raw, like vegetables. We want to make sure that we chill foods promptly and they're not sitting out for long periods of time to allow bacterial growth. And finally, we want to make sure that we cook foods to the proper temperature. Your book has a list of temperatures that are the right temperatures to cook for food items such as various types of meat and poultry and fish and eggs. So you want to make sure that these foods are cooked properly and then chilled properly after they are served. Following these simple instructions will help prevent foodborne illness. So in summary, we have talked about a lot of things related to the digestive tract. We've looked at the path that digestion takes and the muscular actions of digestion. We've looked at digestive secretions and what their activities are. We've described anatomical details of the GI tract and how these features help to facilitate digestion and absorption. We've talked about the delivery of nutrients through the GI tract to body cells by the vascular system and the transport of fats by lipoproteins. We've talked about how hormones, nerves, and bacteria influence the health and activities of GI tract, and we've talked very briefly about the causes and effects of foodborne illness and how we can ensure food safety.